Next up, a guy that's very familiar to Auburn fans,
Woo! 14.
Captain Thorne, out there at number 14. So only two guys in the SEC in the now expanded 16-team conference are thought to be worse starting quarterbacks than Payton Thorne. Now, in all fairness, for every returning starting quarterback, I looked at the PFF numbers, and there are 6 quarterbacks who are going to be returning as starters in the SEC. That list includes Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, Brady
Mm-hmm.
Cook, Jalen Milroe, Graham Mertz, and Payton Thorne. Payton Thorne is listed as the worst of those according to PFF's rankings. Like PFF even has him as the worst returning starter in the
Yeah.
SEC.
Okay, so at the risk of sounding like a Payton Thorne apologist,
Okay.
uh, this ranking, hear me out, is more about how last season went than
Oh,
Payton's actual talent.
100% this is about how last season went.
Payton
100%.
Thorne is not the 14th best QB in the conference. He's
Yeah.
just not.
Yeah.
And
I
so
listen, and I am not a Payton Thorne apologist, but I thought this was a
this
little this is a little too low.
it's a little disrespectful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now how last season went wasn't all on Payton Thorne.
Yes.
So he's a victim of circumstance in this ranking because his circumstances dictated that he come in at 14. Now, I totally understand anybody who ranks him where statistically he finished, which is near the bottom.
Right.
But are there 13 other quarterbacks in this league right now better than Payton Thorne? No, they're not. Right? So, he's realistically, in terms of talent and experience, he's a middle of the pack QB in the SEC, 7, 8-ish. But again, got to go with what you've seen on the field. And last year, 1,700 yards is not going to win you any awards. But in his 2 years at Michigan State, 32 and 2,600 respectively, right? 2,600 yards would have made him like the 5th best passer in the league last year, I believe. Look this up, all right? And so it's tough, man. Again, was there 1,000 yards of progression from Payton Thorne's 2022 season at Michigan State to 2023 at Auburn that's on Payton Thorne? No.
2,600 yards last season would have had him ranked 10th.
10th. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yards.
Yeah. 3,200 yards would have had him ranked 5th, I think. Like his
That is correct. 3,200 yards would have put him at 5th.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, man, at 2,600 yards, Auburn wins 2 more games last year.
Agreed.
Easily. You beat Alabama, you definitely don't lose to New Mexico State. So, yeah, like I said, Peyton's a little bit of a victim of circumstance. We're going to spend a little bit more time here because obviously we're in Auburn. We're doing the whole SEC.
Right.
But damn it, we're an Auburn podcast. And Payton Thorne is not the 14th best quarterback in this league.
I think I'm torn. I'm torn on this because I understand that it's based upon last season, his only season in the SEC. I understand that if they were doing a list, I would hope, well, let me say this. I'd hope the credit that they're giving for the potential of guys, if they were to go out and put a 247 list together of the best wide receivers going into 2024, that Cam Coleman would be towards the top based on how they are projecting people with this. Yeah. I'd hope Cam Coleman would be above some guys that are returning that maybe had earned, a little bit of respect or could have potentially shown a little bit better had the system been better, quarterback XYZ, right? Like, so I'm assuming that those things are true in how they're doing their evaluations. But if you take into the totality, as you said, his career and not just his time at Auburn, his career is Power 5 experience, right? So it's not as if he was coming from a group of 5 or, some FCS program. He does have P5 experience prior to Auburn. I think this is a little low. And but I understand the hesitancy to place Payton Thorne higher on this list based upon how he played last season.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think, and here's where I have trouble with it. you're almost saying you assume it's going to be more of the same this season if you're doing this based upon projections, even though you have evidence that he can play better than this statistically, as far as the number of yards, number of attempts, all that. Now, his completion percentages, again, he kind of is who he is. But if you give him more attempts, he's going to have more yards. And that's kind of where you get into this quandary of like, all right, well, so let's say next season he does throw for 3,000 yards.
Yeah.
Like, do you just think he's not capable of it anymore? He did it once before.
And
he's
came close the second time.
Yeah, but now he's just fully incapable of doing it? Or are you speaking to what you feel like is offensive dysfunction for Auburn in the pass game?
Correct. Yeah. Let me put this in perspective. And you got the numbers pulled up for last year, or QB numbers for the SEC. Look,
yes,
in his 11-2 season at Michigan State, he threw for what? 27 touchdowns versus 10 interceptions. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 10 interceptions would have been the second worst interception mark in the league last year, would it not?
The second worst. The only person that threw more interceptions was Devin Leary.
So even in his best season, is my point, right? He would have had the second worst interception mark in the league. Right. This is where it's fair for Payton. This is the dichotomy of Payton Thorne, right? 3,200 yards, but 10 interceptions, which would have been the worst in the league, like the second worst in the league. And when you talk to Michigan State people, they tell you there's good Payton Thorne and there's bad Payton Thorne, right? Auburn, because the system didn't work, got more bad Payton Thorne and less of good Payton Thorne. So the interceptions number and those turnover worthy plays that PFF likes to keep, those held true. But to your point, the pass attempts limited good Payton Thorne, which was 3,000 plus yard Payton Thorne. You were never going to get that at 266 pass attempts. Now you have the pass catchers that you say you need. Keandre Lambert-Smith, leading receiver at Penn State last year. Cam Coleman, top 5 prospect. Improved Cam Brown, maybe. Perry Thompson, top 30 prospect. I want to see 400 pass attempt Payton Thorne back. Throw the ball up to Cam Coleman. I don't care if he's quadruple covered. I do care. I do care. Don't do that. If he's quadruple covered, somebody else is open.
Somebody else is wide open. Like, but, please.
Give him his chance to go out there and win 50-50 balls. Or 80-20 balls, as Payton would like to call them. Because the other Coleman that he threw to called them 80-20 balls. And get those pass attempts up. Because the completion percentage, Ike, is probably going to hold true.
Yeah.
I think from 60, he has nowhere really to go but up.
Yeah.
In terms of completion percentage. And then let's see where this thing lands.
Right.
Give him 400 pass attempts. And I think at 400 pass attempts, Payton Thorne can produce well over 3,000 yards passing.
Yeah, with the weapons that he has, I don't think there's a reason why he couldn't.
Put the air back into football, man. This thing was about system last year. You took it out of it because you did, keep telling everybody, watch these interviews we're doing. Hugh Freeze did a lot of interviews before and after A-Day. I can tell you he was probably the most candid in any interview, right? Like, I know I'm biased. In our interview than he was in any interview, talking about what he felt like went wrong last year, where he feels like it will be different this year, and why he's going to go back to the old Hugh Freeze. When I brought up Payton Thorne's pass attempts, you know what he said? He cut me. He interjected and said, "Mike, this is the lowest of my career."
Yeah.
This is the least any quarterback that's ever played for me, Hugh Freeze, has ever thrown the ball.
Right.
So, now he attacked that thing. And this is here's what we know about Hugh Freeze. If he thinks something is wrong with a particular thing, he's going to attack that thing with all his might.
Facts.
Right?
That's what he did with recruiting last season. He was just like, listen, we got to get more talent in here. He devoted every ounce of energy he could to it.
That's exactly where I was going. Thank you.
Yeah.
He put every ounce of energy he had into recruiting, and recruiting was successful. This year, I think the thing that he's going to attack is going to be that passing game. And he's going to say, Ike, we got to improve this passing game because I have to prove to my top 30 prospect wide receivers that we're going to throw the ball. Right. And then I need to prove to other quarterbacks that are going to come in that we're going to throw the ball. And then I need to prove to the boosters and the NIL funding people that we're going to throw the ball. Because you know what? Today's college football requires you to throw the ball.
Yeah.
A lot. And if you're not doing that, you better have a hell of a run game.
Yeah, your run game's got to be ridiculous.
So the air goes back into football this year. The time is now. There's not another year. You got to start to move toward. We asked him during that interview, hey, coach, maybe we see more 10 and 11 personnel. He said, hey, I love 12 personnel. But we need to run more 10 because that's what we felt like we had to do last year. If you're bringing in these pass catchers and you're telling me you can't miss on Keandre Lambert-Smith, all these kids can't be busts. I think that Shorter and Hooks were better than what we saw last year. And
I'll agree with that.
And the system, dumped them down some. And this year, the system can't do that. You got rid of Philip Montgomery. You're saying, I didn't love his answer on the play calling deal. We covered this on Sunday's show, right? About like the whole, everybody's going to have to say, you have a call, you have a call. No, that's not going to happen. He's capping when he says that, right? But he's going to take over this thing. He's going to put the air back into football this year. And I think that it looks drastically different with Payton Thorne. He's not the 14th best. I mean, he played in the 14th best system last year, maybe offensively. So he takes that 14th rank by default, but he's not the 14th best quarterback in this league, man. There are maybe 7 other quarterbacks in this league right now better than Payton Thorne based on experience and accomplishment and ability.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's weird to give guys credit and they haven't played any. I think if you haven't played a single snap in the SEC, you should automatically go to the back of this list until you've actually done something. And I understand that bad experience is not worth more than having no experience. But some experience should count for something.
Yeah, right? Bad experience is something to learn from.
Correct.
Right, that's at least something to learn from. And I think that Payton Thorne thinks that this thing is going to move forward this year based on the things that they've corrected.
Right.
He made a very compelling case for why this thing may look different next year. And I got to tell you, man, I believed him. I thought it didn't sound like a bunch of excuses to me. It sounded like reality, what his reality was last year and what everybody's reality was on offense. Then Freeze came, and in the interview, I'm going to reference the interview we did again. If you haven't watched this interview, best 15 minutes Hugh Freeze has given anyone all year. He said, I haven't talked to Payton about this, but I think he senses that when he comes around us as a coaching staff now, it feels like we've done this together before.
Mm-hmm.
A little scary thinking that maybe he didn't feel that last year. But hey, looking forward, as long as he feels it this year, last year is forgiven. You know why? Because if he does, we're going to see way more than 1,700 yards passing.
Right.
How many TDs did he have last year?
4 passing touchdowns.
Yeah. The number just went right out of
16.
16? We're going to see more than 16 passing TDs. Hopefully we see less than 10 interceptions. And more big-time throws down the field.
Yeah.
Look, man, you heard what both him and Hank threw the ball up to Cam Coleman. And what Hank said during our interview with him was something that I thought, man, whoo. He said, I saw that safety set his feet, Mike.
Yeah.
You can't just be out there setting your feet with Cam Coleman on the field.
Right.
Because he's going to get you. You don't want to do that. He told everybody in the SEC during our interview, if you set your feet, we're throwing it to Cam.
Right. I mean, that's what you have to do. You make them pay for guessing wrong.
Correct. And he threw it up. People are going to want to see if Cam Coleman is not going to sneak up on anybody. But, I expect the coaching staff to let Payton Thorne try to get the ball to his weapons more. Because at the end of the year, if it doesn't go great for them, you as a staff, you at least need to be able to say, look, man, it wasn't because we didn't try to get you the ball.
Right.
We're going to do this, and it's going to get better. When I recruited you, I told you where we were at. This is step 1 in the process.
Correct.
Hang with us another year. And then, if Payton has any level of success, it'll give these receivers confidence that Auburn is going to put a capable passer behind center next year.
100%.
Continue that progress.
And that's what Auburn fans have to be patient with, is understanding that the progress is actually what's most important.
Yeah.
You hope that it equates to stuff in the win column, but you have to see the progress in concept. You have to, and if the quarterback is screwing up all the stuff, then that's an easy sell to a next quarterback and say, man, look, I've got dynamic guys out here. I just need you to be the trigger man for it. It's an easy sell. I just didn't have the trigger man last season, right? If everything else, because everybody else is young. All the receivers are young. You've got young talent in your running back room. You've got young talent up front of your offensive line. You've got young talent at tight end. If it doesn't go well this season, you can sell to another quarterback. Look at all these pieces. This is what Cam Newton said when he was talking about what he made as his decision to come to Auburn. I looked at all those other pieces around him and I said, Mississippi State didn't have enough returning talent. Yep. Auburn's got all the returning talent. This is easy. I just walk in here and add my stuff to that. We're good.
Yeah, the O-line too. And subsequently, the year after, Russell Wilson said,
nobody's there.
Yeah,
the cupboard is now bare.
He went to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, right. So, I mean, and look, it worked out. He won the Rose Bowl that year. Wisconsin had a pretty good year at Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But that bolsters your point. You go where the pieces are. And I think that this is the beginning of laying that foundation of showing people, hey, we have the pieces here. We just need one more piece, and that's a quarterback. So whether that's Walker White, hopefully he makes a big jump this offseason. I'm really rooting for that young man to have a great career here. But yeah, like the Hugh Freeze QB needs to be back, man. I'm telling you. And 400 attempts, I think will accomplish a lot of things we've never seen here at Auburn. I think a Hugh Freeze quarterback with 400 attempts easily breaks the single season yardage mark at QB. If he gives his QB 400 attempts, Payton Thorne may leave here as the single season leader.
Wouldn't that
be yards? Wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah. Man, I don't know. Chris Todd broke records under Gus. Why can't Payton break those same records under Hugh?
Definitely a possibility. All right, we're going to continue this conversation because we have 13 other quarterbacks we need to talk about. But we're going to get into some of your questions and comments after we get back from the break, pay a couple of bills, and we'll get back into the rest of the list from 247. You are watching the Midweek Report.